Hey guys, it's been a beautiful Saturday here. Hope y'all are having a good day wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Listen, I'm going to back up a minute. I know that in the last letter I promised that we'd be talking about spending and taxes in relation to GDP, and I'm going to get to that. But looking at it and preparing for this, I realized that that's going to be the next letter or maybe even the one after that, because right now I need for you to understand exactly what your government has been doing to you. I'm going to start by calling it what it is, your debt. I know you didn't have anything to do with it. You didn't vote for it. Nobody asked your opinion. You didn't give your approval. But I promise you that the government has your name attached to it. So, our debt. Well, first of all, it's made up of two parts, current liabilities and future liabilities. Now, you understand what a current liability is. You buy a car for $30,000, you pay $5,000 down, you go to the bank and borrow $25,000. You now have a current liability of $25,000. When we talk about the government and future liabilities, we use another term, unfunded liabilities. It's unfunded because, you see, the Congress has made promises to pay out sums of money for which they have made absolutely no provision for raising the funds themselves. So that promise is unfunded. So what about the debt? Well, today our current liabilities are about $5 trillion. Now that's trillion with a T, and if you want to write that out on paper so you can see what that looks like, it takes 12 zeros. Our unfunded liability is $40 trillion. Yes, $40 trillion. So altogether, our debt, yours and mine, is about $45 trillion. In fact, I'm sure it's a little higher than that because those are 2005 numbers and the debt actually goes up every day. Now, if you're like me, you probably have no concept whatsoever of what $45 trillion is. It sounds like monopoly money. So I'm going to give you something to compare it to, something that will make sense to you. You remember how difficult it was to qualify for that $200,000 home loan just a little while back? Well, in addition to having that $200,000 mortgage, you now owe the federal government $375,000. And if you're married, the two of you together actually owe $750,000. You might reasonably ask, how will I ever get ahead? And the honest answer is, you won't. Or probably won't. If we let things keep going like they are, you're probably not going to live as well as your parents did. And by the way, you'll be the first generation in the history of this country to experience that. And I'm sorry to say, but it's the truth, that once again is the fault mostly of the decisions your baby boomer parents have made. In my first letter to you, I apologize for being a little cynical and saying that the Democrats and the Republicans are all the same. They're self-centered, self-serving idiots. But as I have been studying to prepare for these letters to you, I realized that my first gut reaction was actually true. Do you know that the approval rating today for Congress is only 20%? And that means that one guy in 5 thinks they're doing a good job. 4 out of 5 think that they are not. And I'm pretty sure that if you could find that one guy, you would find a guy who probably is a high school dropout collecting a government check. For the last 30 years or so, the Democrats are generally the ones who have initiated the new big spending programs. And they've generally wanted to raise taxes along the way to pay for them. The Republicans, on the other hand, have talked about smaller government, free market solutions, balanced budgets, lower taxes. But it's ironic that during the last 12 years, the only budget surpluses came under the Bill Clinton administration, and George, the guy I voted for, along with the Republican Congress, has actually doubled your debt. Now, don't misinterpret that to mean that the Dems are the good guys and the Republicans are the culprits, because I say again, they're all the same and they're all to blame. There is good news, or at least potentially good news, and that is that if you and your young friends are willing to do it, we can get you out of debt pretty quickly. Remember that the current liabilities are only $5 trillion. Now, we can't wish those away. That money has been spent, people are holding IOUs, and we're going to have to pay that back. But that big unfunded liability can be reduced or even erased. Honestly, it'll be a difficult task. And we'll have to make some hard choices. But it is possible to do that. I know there are hundreds of problems to be solved. I know you're anxious for answers about global warming and climate change and whether or not to drill on the outer shelf and what's happening to the polar bears and what are the alternative energy scenarios and how soon can we get out of Iraq. Those are all pressing questions and important things. But the first thing we need to deal with is the debt. And I know how to do that. It's actually pretty simple. Basic, simple process. When you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you do is you stop digging. You know, we have 2 presidential candidates now. We're down to the 2, and honestly, I'm not enamored with either one of them. But they're the only choices we have, and we're going to need to pick the least worst of the 2 of them. However, your generation needs to take control of the dialogue. Stop soaking up all the happy talk about what they're going to do for you in the future and pin them down on this one question. Sir, if you're elected president, will you, in the first year, deliver a balanced budget amendment? Ask your congressional representatives the same question. I promise you, they're going to bob and weave and slither and dither, but pin them down. It's a simple question. Yes or no, will you or not? Honestly, I'm willing to make my voting decision based on that one question alone, because I know that once we make that commitment to a balanced budget amendment and a balanced budget each year, it will force us into some hard dialogue and hard decisions about the merits and costs of all these other programs. And we'll make some good decisions about that, I believe. Okay, if we don't do that, here's the thing. The politicians are going to keep throwing out their political candy because they're spending other people's money, and the older folks don't seem to care. I told you this mess was largely my generation's fault. I believe that's true, and I want to explain that a little bit further in the next letter. It'll probably be a little bit shorter, but I want to do that next, and then, I promise, we're going to talk about all these budget issues in relation to GDP so you can see how we have spent our money, how we're spending our money, and what's going to happen if we don't deal with these problems. Okay, talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. Remember, I love you, and call your mom.